Hey pups! Well, I was planning on doing a video about steel production in our factory, but thanks to Jason Coffee Stain Studios posting their video on Friday, I'm doing this instead. So, welcome to Pup Copper Games. Woo! So, on Friday, Coffee Stain Studios released the the first Update 5 teaser trailer, and they're saying that we're now into teaser season, so take whatever that means with a grain of salt. But yeah, so here's the map. You can see it on the screen there. This is what they showed off in the video, and yeah, a lot of changes are coming. I mean, yeah, the Northern Forest and the Dune Desert are going to get kind of, not overhauls, but they're going to be purdied up quite a bit. And while that's important, and also like the whole, just completely redoing the Spire Coast and Caves thing that Jace talked about, I'm not going to talk about that today. Surprised? I mean, everybody else is talking about it, and everybody on Reddit apparently is freaking out about the Spire Coast because for some reason they put their factories there. I don't know. I mean, if you haven't unlocked blenders, why are you even doing anything too intense in the Spire Coast? I mean, just throw a minimum amount of oil power up there and you'll be good for a while until you start building up to nuclear or something. But still, I mean, are you a mad lad or something for trying to put everything up there? I mean, there's nothing other than oil over there. You have to go into the Northern Forest to get the good stuff. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about the Dune Desert or the Northern Forest, since, like I said, everybody's talking about them. I'm not going to talk about the Spire Coast because everybody else is talking about it. And that's fine. But I'm going to do something a little different. Since Northern Forest, Dune Desert have been kind of bookmarked as kind of the things that are going to be adjusted for in Update 5, I'm thinking, let's look at this map and talk about the stuff that isn't going to be addressed in Update 5, but which may be addressed in an Update 6 or version 1.0. So, namely, I'm talking about the Titan Forest, which is Piggy Death, the Abyss Cliffs, which is High Death, and the Swamp, which is Sneaky Death. These are areas where I feel like they could get some serious TLC. I mean, it'll definitely be texture makeovers like in the Northern Forest and the Dune Desert. I mean, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, and maybe in the Titan Forest they'll make the foliage changes, similar foliage changes that they're making in the Northern Forest. Abyss Cliffs, it's just kind of is. It's there. It's got some nodes. It's got some boss hogs and a bunch of piggies. So I'm adjusting myself here. Got my up ears. But yeah, the Abyss Cliffs. I don't know. I'm hard pressed to think of anything really too intense they would give it other than just a general little polish and makeover. Now the Swamp. A lot of people don't like the Swamp, and they don't bother going there until they're late mid to early late game, and I totally understand why. The Swamp is death. There are like a dozen different things that can kill you in the Swamp. You can get radiation poisoning, you can get gored by pigs, you can get set on fire by the mob things, you can fall from many different places, and of course, if you don't bring a gas mask, just don't bring anything with you then, because you're gonna die. But yeah, it's always been a late game area, and it should be challenging. But it shouldn't actively discourage players from working in it. And I think also, from my limited experience trying to get into aluminum processing, because I've tried it a couple times, it's just the complexity of the aluminum production chain is just very deterring. It is just very deterring to a player, even a player with a good bit of experience. I can't get my cap adjusted straight today. I don't know what it is. Anyways, it would be easier if node distances maybe were addressed a little bit. So maybe it's a little easier to, like, say, you have a clearer path to run a train line through or a truck line or something like that. Because, yeah, I don't know. It's just not easy these days. It's just not easy. Now, there are also several drop pods in the swamp, and, to be fair, several of them require late-game items, which is great. That should be... There should be progress locks in relation to the drop pods. There should be progress locks in terms of you have to produce higher tier items to unlock all the alternative recipes. However, I don't like that some of the drop pods are still locked behind items that aren't even in the game, or maybe they're assets that are in the game but which we are unable to unlock yet as players. Now, this may be remedied in a future, on the path to 1.0. It probably will be, and I'm namely looking at you, quantum oscillators, quantum computers and superposition oscillators. But as of Update 4, they're not in there. If you participate in Fixmas back during the season in December 2020, January of 2021, you will have gotten that as a little gift in the advent calendar, so to speak. But absent that, if you're coming into the game now, unless you hack your computer's clock and fool the game to thinking it's Fixmas, you're not going to get any. You're not going to get any of that things that will allow you to legitimately unlock those drop pods. There are ways to do it. They're kind of hacky and cheaty, but that's not how this pup rolls. Most of the time. I don't use smart mod or anything like that as egregiously as Total Eclipse and Kibitz do. Laying down 1,000 concrete panels is part of the fun, right? Right? Anybody? No? Okay. Anyways, I don't think it would be a terrible idea if maybe some of those drop pod requirements were changed from, requiring those parts that are not in the game. We are not allowed to produce in the game yet, to parts that we can produce now, but which are gated away behind tier 7 and 8. So I'm talking about the really spicy stuff, like the nuclear pasta or the heavy fused frames, maybe even some packaged nitrogen, for example. So yeah, there's a way to do it, but overall, I think the core idea of the swamp is sound. I think the idea of it being a place where you only go once you have reached a certain height. I can't stop fussing with my cap. As a place where you go when you've reached a certain level in the game, I think it's a great idea. And maybe it just really requires some polishing, and maybe making the terrain slightly easier to use. You definitely do want to keep it challenging, but still, you don't want to just completely turn players off to it. Titan Force, kind of the same deal. It's a challenging area just because of the number of pigs in there, and that's kind of the charm. But the spacing of the resources can kind of get annoying after a while, because again, going back to the first time I really organized an aluminum setup, I was pulling bauxite in from, what is this called in the map? Get Lost? I think that's where it was. And I was pulling it over into the Titan Forest because that was really the only area I could get that had the combination of being decently close to coal deposits I think it's still technically the maze or Titan Forest that the coal was in. It's past the little lake and down the little canyon dealy. It's the 4 pure nodes. Anyways, it was the only location which had reasonable access to coal, copper, and water. And I burnt out on that. I burnt out on it, and while the logistics of tying all the resources together are meant to be a challenge in the game and be a way to keep players engaged, I think there's a very fine line between keeping players engaged and just making it frustrating. And to Coffee Stain Studios' credit, they have done good work on adjusting the aluminum production chain in Update 4, because it was even worse in Update 3, 3.5, and there was just a whole much more with fluid management. It was just not fun. You kind of just did aluminum as a way to get to nuclear and to unlock the more advanced tiers. But it's getting better. They are looking at the player feedback, and they're making improvements to that production chain. And I think that if they maybe just scooched over some of these nodes to be a little bit closer, or maybe be clustered tighter together in other places on the map, because there are bauxite deposits over in the red jungle and on those cliffs that overlook the islands. I think most players just call it the Gold Coast. It's on the far west of the map. In, what does this map grid say? XOY1, XOY2. Yeah, so, anyways. So, yeah. Overall, I think those areas will... They just need a little balancing, some polish. I think they're... I mean, if Coffee Stain were to leave those areas as they were now, assuming those late game parts were part of the 1.0 release and they did nothing else to these other terrains that are highlighted in red that are not going to be addressed in Update 5, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I don't know about y'all, but I'd be perfectly fine with that. But if they do come along and polish it, balance it, scooch some nodes around, maybe add a sulfur node or two, I mean, why not? Why not sulfur? I think we'd be good. Now, let's talk about the Red Forest. You know, you'll notice here that it's in red too. A lot of us, even advanced players, don't go in there simply because it is death on a stick. I will get close to the Red Forest. I'll skirt around the cliff sides to get the drop pods, but I will not actively go in there if I can avoid it because it is not fun. I mean, watch Kibitz's videos. He across 3 different playthroughs, he hasn't really gathered up a whole lot of enthusiasm for going into the Red Forest other than to get the uranium and the bauxite. But yeah, so yeah, I think the adjustments to the Red Forest boil down to a few things. And this is aside from general polish. So first off, make it so that the giant trees in there can be cut down or blown up. You know, whatever your preference is. I mean, I know some of you guys are trigger happy with the explosives, so I'm not going to take that away from you. But still, there are a lot of trees there, you know, kind of like the ones in the Titan Forest and elsewhere on the map, where no matter how many Noblists you throw at them, they're just going to stick around. There's no way to get rid of them. So maybe those are just going to be a part of the terrain that's always just going to be there. But it would make kind of sense to include more of an ability to get rid of those, especially for players at advanced levels who are looking to build some kind of, I don't know, aluminum or nuclear factory out in the red jungle. I don't know why, because it's just going to be difficult to get resources up and down. Maybe there are some crazy people who would love to do that. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm not going to satisfactory shame here. The other adjustment I would make, and again, this kind of along the same lines as the swamp. It's a fine line between you want it to be a challenging location that's only kind of accessible in the end game or late game, the late mid through end game, but you don't want to make it impossible. So that you have to prepare for death. I mean, you shouldn't. It should be balanced so you're as likely to die in the Red Forest as you are in any of the more challenging areas, like say the Spire Coast or the swamp or the Blue Crater Lakes. The Blue Crater Lakes, I think, are a good example of a well-balanced later game area, because I guess in theory you could go into the Blue Crater, you know, the one in the south, not the Crater Lakes up on the high plateau with the coal nodes. I'm talking about the Blue Crater Lake with all the spiders and stuff. You can go there if you're in tier 5 or 6. I mean, that's really the first time you really need to go there, because that's going to be when you're starting to play with oil, and there are some oil nodes over there. But as long as you have the the onion peeler wacky stick. You guys know what I'm talking about. You see me one-shot hogs with it before. Yeah, if you just have that, you can do a pretty reasonable job on the blue crater. Ideally, you'd want to have a gas mask too, but still, you don't stand a huge chance of dying if you come in prepared to the blue crater. And I think that's what the swamp and the red jungle should be. You should be, if you're reasonably well prepared and you know what you're doing, you should be able to get through there just fine without worrying too much about dying from 15 different things. And on that note, the nodes in the red jungle in the limited time I've been through there, they've been pretty decently balanced. There are a couple things like the bauxite nodes. They're kind of on the they're overlooking the jungle spires, or the one that's kind of like hanging right there out on the coast at the super high elevation. Those, I don't know, it feels like those are just unnecessarily difficult to get to. And maybe there's a better way to kind of rebalance some of those to make it slightly more manageable for players while still challenging. I mean, again, I realize, coming from a person who is not a game developer but a game player, it's one thing for me to say that. I'm sure it's a struggle for any game developer to find that perfect balance between not wanting to frustrate their player base and wanting to keep them engaged. So, yeah. But, then again, that might just be me. Other players might be perfectly fine with having to go like 200 meters off the ground to get that one bauxite node on the Gold Coast. Now, one interesting thing on this map, this pathway map, I'll call it that, is that when Jay showed it off, he mentioned nothing about this little section down here in X1, Y0. That's the grid. It's the second to, if you're looking at my screen, the image here on my screen, it's the second to leftmost bottom tile. And it has this little thing called Paradise Island. I don't know if that's just a misspelling of paradise, but apparently on older iterations of this of the planet map, this was called like No Man's Land or something like that. And I've read a lot of things on Reddit about people just putting their nuclear waste dump out there because if you step far enough, you go out of bounds and die. So why not put your nuclear waste down there where it serves no point? But, I mean, they gave it a name. So, in my mind, that means that they're going to do something with it. The question is kind of, what are they going to do? Coffee Stain's also hinted at, adding a new biome. And some on Reddit have speculated that this Paradise Island is going to be the new biome. I'm not sure if I buy that necessarily, unless it's going to be like one of those little ancillary biomes, like the Western Dune Forest or the Red Jungle, which isn't a start area. They're just kind of tacked onto the start area, in that area. Yeah. I think it just all really depends on what Coffee Stain Studios is going to use it for. If it's a new start area, I think they'd really want to expand the map and put a lot more than what it is now. I mean, the map is still already a pretty good size at 81 square kilometers. And it's a lot to play with, and I've explored a lot of it, but I have not built in all of it at once. I'm still working on that. But if it's a new start area, I think they would want to put more of a buffer between this Paradise Island and the grassy fields, or they'd have to do something so you just don't... Because it seems kind of like a cop-out to have two start areas right next to each other. I know you technically have that with the Northern Forest and the Rocky Desert, but those biomes are huge. The grass fields are large, but if they kept the map the current size, I mean, Paradise Island would be nothing unless it's meant to be like a super difficult start, where maybe you get like a couple of pure nodes and then you have to expand out from there. I don't know. But then again, it's not even shaded on with the little color key here, so it doesn't look at first glance, it doesn't seem like they're going to do anything with it. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, unless it's really a challenge thing where they stick like 2 iron nodes, a pure copper node, and a pure limestone node on it, and then just kind of encourage you to push out. I just can't see that being a start area. So it may just be like one of those ancillary places where they put something useful or interesting, like another nitrogen well, or I don't know, maybe a uranium node or a bauxite node. I could see coal. I could see coal there, because that's one thing that the grass fields kind of lack. There are 2 pure coal nodes, one down on this little island at the southern part of the grass fields, and then there's one up in the northern forest that's at a higher elevation but close to that sulfur node. So I could see them putting like maybe calling this a biome and putting a special node there, or of some type. Coal, deuterium, maybe quartz. I mean, quartz is kind of difficult to get to in the grass fields, because you really have to go up. I kind of like almost into the Titan Forest area to get to quartz from the grass fields. So I don't really know what they're going to do with that. Or maybe I'm completely wrong, and they're not going to do anything with Paradise Island. That's just going to kind of be this thing that's over there where people can just easily put their nuclear waste. I mean, then again, looking at the map here, there are a bunch of these like areas that are just kind of in nothingness that I guess they could expand land onto and have like completely new biomes. They wholesale expand the world. So I don't know what they're going to do exactly. Yeah, the roadmap to 1.0 is kind of vague right now, and I really, other than what they have already said they're going to do, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm not even sure what they're going to do to the Grand Canyon or the Spire Coast exactly. I mean, they're going to polish it, certainly, so the Spire Coast will probably get the Dune Desert treatment and making the cliffs look all nice and everything, but beyond that, I'm not sure what they're going to do. Maybe they'll add more islands, or maybe it will get more, they'll put down more land in places where there's just water right now. As for the Grand Canyon, though, I kind of like it. I kind of like it the way it is. It's an interesting building challenge, because like the tip of the northern forest, there's a area where there's 4 pure iron nodes and 2 pure copper nodes, some quartz, a bunch of limestone, some coal. That's a great place to build a starter base, and you get a lot of building area by building over the canyon and then building vertically. It's a good challenge, but it's also very, very useful. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to end up doing with a lot of the map, other than what they've said they're going to do. Yeah. So I'd appreciate it. I'd appreciate if you guys could lend your thoughts down in the comments section for now. But I think that's going to be it for all my rambling tonight. If you enjoyed this video, please paw that like button and boop the subscribe button so you don't miss out on more videos from me, Pup Copper. And until next time, pups, alright!